Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 AM. I've got an interesting interview for you tonight. I ran into online someone who calls themselves a hot and holy person. Her name is Ruth Clarence. She's a minister's wife, and what she does is she tells ladies to turn up the heat on their love life with their husband and become the great lover that God intended them to be. I think it's kind of an interesting passion in life. Ruth, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So tell me, how did you get into this?
Well, it was an interesting story, Brian. As you mentioned, I am a minister's wife, and my husband asked me one time if I would speak to the ladies at our church about how to understand and meet their husband's sexual needs, and he was going to do a workshop for the men. Now, I'm a school teacher. I've done lots of public speaking. I have never talked on that topic. So when he asked me, I just laughed. I said, I have no trouble talking about sex, but I said, I don't want to somehow imply that I am a sexpert and I'm going to tell everybody else how to do it. And he said, no, Ruth, I want you to talk about it not as an expert, as a sex therapist or whatever, but just as an ordinary woman of faith. And talk to the ladies about some of the struggles, the inhibitions you've had, and how we keep love alive in our marriage. So reluctantly, I agreed to do it. As a result, there was a record attendance of the ladies at our church. Of course, everybody wanted to come and hear about the pastor's sex life. I gave my chat, and after I said to the ladies, was that helpful? They said, Ruth, you are one of the first women that we have heard really talk about it in this really down-to-earth, non-clinical way. Shortly after that, I was asked to speak at quite a large conference on the same topic. From there, one invitation just led to the other. They said, Ruth, your presentation's too short. You have to do a one-day seminar. So I put together a full-day seminar, Hot and Holy Lady. After that, they said, Ruth, you talk too fast. We couldn't get all the notes down. You've got to write it down. I ended up writing a best-selling book. And I've traveled literally around the world talking about this. So Brian, if you would have asked me if I would be going around the world talking to women about sex, I would have said, you are crazy. But apparently this is my destiny. And it's been one of the most fun things I've ever done because I really feel like I'm adding value to ladies. And the thing I was really scared about when I started was I thought people would say, and where's your credentials? You're not a doctor. You're not a nurse. You're not a sex therapist. What gives you the right to talk about it? But as I started to talk to literally hundreds of ladies, they said, Ruth, the reason we came to see you was because you weren't any of those. You were just ordinary like us. We're not doctors, sex therapists, but yet we want to meet the sexual needs of our husband. And we love to hear the experiences of a normal woman. Not that I think I'm the epitome of every woman alive, for sure not, but it seemed that I was really relating with a lot of the experiences of my audience. And so they said, that's why we love to hear you. And they nicknamed me Dr. Ruth. Believe me, I'm not a medical doctor, but that's what they call me now as I travel.
So you said you changed people's thoughts about sex. How do you change their thoughts and what do you tell them?
Well, the first thing I tell them is that your most important sex organs are not your genitals. It's your brain. And if you have really good, healthy thoughts in your brain, it will move down your body and affect your heart, your feelings. And when you get those two things right, the genitals will take care of themselves. But so many people have so many weird thoughts and dysfunctional and just incorrect thoughts about sex, particularly in a context of faith. So how do I change their thoughts? The first thing I talk to them about is how God views sex. Because a lot of the ladies who come to my seminars, they've been raised in a Catholic home, a Jewish home, an evangelical home. And I don't know where they got some of the ideas about sex, but they are absolutely out to lunch. Somehow they think that it's a shameful thing and they need to feel guilty and that, the priest told them just lay down, service your man, there's nothing in it for you, and that God thinks it's some sort of a shameful sin. And I say, I don't know what book you're reading, but that's not the Bible that I'm reading. Because as Adam and Eve were in the first couple in the Garden of Eden, in the first 22 words of the counseling that God gave to Adam, he told him to leave, cleave, and do what? Become one flesh. In our language, we would call make love. So I said, where did you get the idea that God didn't endorse this? This was the very first project he gave Adam. Make love to that beautiful woman I just gave you. I made your bodies to fit together perfectly, and I would like you to enjoy this to the full. And for many ladies, that seems to be a brand new thought, because that kind of teaching has not been given to them, like I say, by their priest, by their pastor. And so that's the first thing that I try to change their thoughts. There's a whole book of the Bible, Song of Solomon, that talks about the intimate, hot love relationship between Solomon and his wife. So you'd think that if God thought that this was some sort of shameful act, he wouldn't have given a whole book of the Bible to talk about this. And no, God's not blushing when we talk about sex. And so again, many ladies say, wow, I never knew that was talking about sex. I thought that was an allegory. I didn't think it was to be taken at face value. And I say, no, you're wrong. It can be taken at face value. So that's the first thing that I really like to key in on, is what kind of thoughts were put in your mind. And I refer to your mind as a computer. And just like a computer, you put in good data, you get good output. But many computers have been infected with viruses. And what does viruses do? They slow down your productivity, they hamper your effectiveness. And so I like to say, ladies, open up your mind, give me that brain, I'll help you change your thoughts and get rid of some of those viruses that perhaps you were raised with. And ladies say, Ruth, this is so enlightening, because you've given me permission to love my husband and enjoy my sex life like I always wanted to. But somehow I could see the priest or the rabbi looking over my shoulder saying, don't enjoy this. This is only about making babies. And you've shown me that that's simply not the case. So that's the first thing we talk about. The second thing is we talk about you need to change your thoughts about how perhaps your past is negatively affecting your sex life. 1 in 4 Canadian ladies have had sexual abuse of some description.
Really?
So,
1 in 4? That's astronomical.
Yes, it is. And actually, I think that is an old stat, to be actually honest with you. And so a lot of these beautiful ladies enter into marriage with a whole lot of baggage that some of them never chose to carry. It was a dad, a grandpa, a boyfriend who raped them or misused them. And so here you have these beautiful ladies who marry, hopefully, a loving man, and they have so much inhibitions. They have this internal hatred toward men, or they think, well, I've been sexually abused, I'm damaged goods, I could never have a good sex life. And I say, no, I need to help you change your thoughts on that, because that's not true. Maybe those men in your life ruined your childhood or your teenage years, or maybe a past marriage, you were in an abusive situation. They ruined that period of time. But don't give them the power to ruin the rest of your life and rob you from the beautiful intimacy you can enjoy with your husband. If you do that, you're giving them the power to shut down something that can be so meaningful and so intimate. And so I help ladies rethink that no, they're not damaged goods, that God wants them to help move past those hurts so that they can become the great lovers that God wants them to be. So that's the second thing. The third thing is I help them change their thoughts about how men are wired. A lot of times, women just don't seem to understand how their husband is put together. I didn't. When I got married, my mom, she prepared me in a lot of ways to get married. She never said one word about sex. Our pastor at our church said very little, and a lot of the messages that ladies get are from TV. But there's thousands of ladies that don't want the Hollywood style of sex where you're in bed with a new lover every night. They're not looking for that. They want to make it work with one man that they can be intimate and trust and have a mutually satisfying relationship. And so as a young bride, I really didn't know what made Simon tick. And I remember hearing the statement that men need sex. And I said, need sex? I need a trip to Hawaii. Like, I didn't understand the idea of need. And some ladies would say, well, you need air to breathe. You need food and water. Those are basic needs. Nobody ever died because of lack of sex. And that's true. But I know some marriages that have died because of lack of sex. And so as I began to realize that this was an actual physiological need for a man, that it wasn't just that he was some oversexed animal, that this was how God had created his body. And that approximately, so the doctors tell me, about approximately every 72 hours, a man's testes fills up with seminal fluid. And so his body, his testosterone is responsible for that. And his body is screaming at him, hey, you know what? We're full to capacity. We got to download this. And so his body is asking for release. It's not just that sex is always on his mind. And that was a new thought to me. And I thought, well, if that's the case, and I am the person that can meet that need, that legitimate physiological need, then I need to step up to the plate willingly. And it's not just a physical need, but that's how men connect with women emotionally. When they make love, that's the most intimate act they can do. That's often what gets them talking, sharing their feelings. And so when they're cut off from sex for long periods of time, what does it do? It creates barriers, it creates walls, it creates distance. And so I give it a whole section on how men are wired, most of which I was unaware of when I married my great husband, Simon. But as I learned that and learned more about how his body ticked, I was then more equipped to meet his needs, as he had to learn about me. There's two sides to every bed. I just happen to be talking about our side because my audiences are women. But he had to learn about how to open up my sexual responses as well. So, how God views sex, how your past affects, how men are wired, and then I talk about how the seasons of a marriage affect your sex life.
The seasons? What are the seasons of a marriage?
Yes. When you're a newlywed, you've got no kids, you've got lots of energy, you're having full night sleeps. Hey, you know what? Most of us had a lot of energy for sex. And then kids came along, no sleep. We didn't like our new, not improved body after having babies, saggy boobs, stretch marks. All of those things affected our thoughts about ourselves, our own image. And so often at that point, their sex life goes downhill because they're tired. They don't love themselves. They don't love their body. They've lost that libido. And then sometimes busy moms, they just get busy with kids, carting them all over the place, being mom's taxi, and somehow sex gets put on the back burner. And it becomes a boring routine, same old, same old. And then you have the menopausal woman who estrogen is being depleted. Her sex drive is taken a nosedive, no fault of hers. It's because just a physiological thing. But you need to be aware of that so that you rethink what now is good sex as a senior as opposed to what was good sex perhaps in your early 20s. So I'm a grandma now. I've been through all these seasons as newlywed, mother of preschoolers, busy mother of teenagers, and a postmenopausal woman. And so I share with them some of the struggles I had and how I worked through them. And the ladies say, oh, this is so helpful. You have made me feel normal. I thought I was the only woman on the planet that thought like this. And so those are some of the ways that I help ladies change their thinking and give them new ideas, give them new passion, help to restore the libido that they maybe had, but somehow it got buried under diapers and laundry and bills. So Absolutely. That's just a small portion of some of the things we talk about to get those good thoughts in their computer, in their brain, which then, once we get rid of all those viruses, hey, ladies say, I went home after your seminar, my husband didn't know what hit him. He said, what did that lady say? Whatever it was, I love her. And boy, we are connecting in a way that we just have never connected before.
We're chatting today with Ruth Clarence, she calls herself a hot and holy lady, and she's got online books and seminars and talks. And we're going to take a break for messages. We're going to come back. We're going to hear a little bit about her online courses. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting today with Ruth Clarence, who is the hot and holy lady that does seminars for people that may, because of churches or synagogues or whatnot, have lost some of their sexual relations and desire. Ruth, you say you have some online courses. Can you tell us what you teach in these online courses? What's the content?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say the ladies who I'm addressing, some of which are angry, they're stressed out, they're sick and tired of the same old sex life. Some of them are scared because they just aren't connecting with that man who's laying beside them in the bed. Or there's some ladies who have very good sex lives who are saying, Ruth, help us take it to the next level. And so, yes, I was doing live seminars, and I still do some of that. However, I don't want to do quite as much traveling as I have done in the past. So what I decided to do was to put my course online. And so ladies can purchase the course, and then they can watch the 8 modules in the privacy of their own home and work at it. They can either binge watch or do modules one at a time. There's my book is a textbook. There's handouts, downloadable handouts. And in addition to my teaching by myself, I also interviewed a medical doctor, a pelvic health specialist, a fitness specialist, a psychologist, and asked them some of the questions that I didn't really feel adequately prepared to answer. So it's really quite a comprehensive course that, as I said, you can access online. And then I also offer personal, confidential, one-on-one counseling via phone. Because often ladies, after they take my course, they say, Ruth, I just have this question that could help me apply it to my unique situation. Can I ask you a question? Can you help me process this? And so I also offer that. In addition to that, I also counsel men. And you may find that funny that, a woman is talking to men about sex, but so many men have talked to me and said, Ruth, I don't understand what goes on inside a woman's head and body. You're a woman. Can you help me understand my wife more effectively? And so I give one-on-one coaching to them and have had just terrific responses from the men who said, Ruth, you've given me the key. You've given me some strategies so that I can love my wife better.
Okay. Sell us some of the strategies. What are the keys?
Some of the strategies is, first of all, recognizing that a good sex life takes an effort. If you watch TV, you think you just flop into bed and all of a sudden it's passionate and hot and everything comes together with no effort. And I say no. I give ladies tools on how to talk about sex. That's one of the first keys, is you have to communicate with your husband. Find out what his expectations are. Let him know what yours are. Find out about his family history, about his own sexual history. What kind of baggage has he brought into the marriage? So that's one of the main strategies, as I get ladies talking to their husbands. Because many say, we maybe talked about sex in our premarital counseling, and we really haven't talked about it since. And they've been married 10, 15 years. So that's a huge strategy, is you need to communicate. Secondly, you need to plan. Oftentimes, after people get married for a while, sex is just sort of like an afterthought. And I say, no, you need to plan. You need to think about how you're going to possibly dress, the ambience in the room, have a nap in the afternoon so that you'll have extra energy. You have to plan romantic getaways every once in a while. I give ladies all kinds of practical tips and ideas on how to do that. So you need to talk, you need to plan, and endeavor to have romance a part of every day. Oftentimes people think, well, romance is just, Valentine's and our anniversary or birthdays. And I say, no way. I want romance, love, passion, hot sex most of the time. Why does it only have to be on special occasions? So ladies say, yeah, so do I. Ruth, tell us how. And that's what I do. I give them those effective strategies so that they can keep the fire burning. I use this analogy. If you want a fire to keep blazing and hot, what do you have to do?
Give it
You have
fuel.
to add regular kindling. You have to feed it. And see, what often happens, the fire is burning bright when you first got married because you're feeding it, you're sending cards, you're being thoughtful, you're giving your mate your best time and energy for sex. And then, sometimes intentionally, but just because, you've got kids and a business and whatever, somehow you stop adding that kindling. So what happens to the fire? It wasn't that you two didn't love each other. The fire died because of neglect. And I say, girls, that does not have to happen. You need to work at it. Your husband needs to work at it with you. But let's keep that passion and spark alive. It doesn't have to be ho-hum, boring, a pressure instead of a pleasure. It doesn't have to be a thankless chore. It can be something that is so meaningful and fun. But it doesn't just happen. Like anything in life. If you put effort into it, you'll get a return.
So what are some of the strategies you tell men?
Well, basically the same thing is that you need to talk to your wife. When I talk to women and I say that one of the top needs for men is sex, I tell men one of the top needs for women is affection. And that doesn't always mean sex. How are you making her feel important? Secondly, how are you talking to her? How are you connecting with her emotionally? If a husband has ignored his wife all day and watched TV or been playing video games all night, never said a word to his wife all evening, and then hops into bed and said, "Oh, hi, how are you? Let's get it on." The wife is saying,
Not
"You
happy.
never eaten one iota to put the kids to bed. You never helped pick up one thing around this house or with the dishes. I've worked like a dog. I'm dead tired. And now at 11 o'clock at night after you finish watching the news or the reruns of the football game, you expect me to turn on like that." And I say, "Men, no. You got to start the fire earlier in the day with compliments, with touching, with helping around the house, with coming to bed, talking to her, finding out how her day was. Then when she's opened up her heart to you, then she'll be usually more than willing to open up her body." But men don't often see it that way. For some men are great at it. And like I say, even my own husband, when we got married, he said, "Ruth, I don't know much about your body, but you teach me." And Simon was a great learner, was a great student. And as I taught him about what things brought pleasure to me, and we talked about it, we had frequent exchanges on this, our love life just continued to grow. So that's just a few of the strategies to men, is that you need to find out how your wife is wired and then seek to meet her needs in the way that she shares with you when you talk to her.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating. Let's go back to your comment about abuse, because I do think there's a lot of people that have hang-ups, and those hang-ups come from things that happened when they were child or teenagers. And it's really challenging for people to get over those hang-ups that they've got. How do you help them do that?
Yes, I can't agree with you more. If that rape or that abuse was the most painful thing in your life, what would make you want to engage in something that was perceived as sexual when that represented the biggest hurt or wound in your life? And so you're absolutely right. Gals who have had that kind of wounding, it's very difficult, but not impossible to get over that. I think, as I said earlier, when I have them recognize that they are not going to give in or give that man that much power to destroy the rest of their life, there seems to become you are absolutely right. I am not going to let that person or individual or whatever rob me of my future. Once I get them with that kind of impetus or that kind of determination, then sometimes they have to go back and, not sometimes, all the time, forgive those people who abuse them. Now, does that mean what the person did was right? No. Does that mean that it wasn't painful? Absolutely not. But if women keep that anger toward that man, you can't share love when you're so angry. And so I help ladies to process that. And we talk about it in counseling, and they cry it out, they pray it out, we write it out. Help them to process that and close that chapter and say, that was a bad, ugly chapter of my life. However, I am now going to open a new chapter. I am not going to make my husband, who loves me, pay for the mistakes of perhaps what my father or my grandfather or some other very mean and abusive person did. So I'm going to choose now to close that chapter and open a new one that's beautiful, that is celebrated. I'm going to have my confidence boost in the bedroom because I now know my own worth. I'm not just a piece of meat that a man can just use and throw out like I have been as a child. I now have a new perception of my worth, my beauty, my dignity, and therefore I bring that whole person now to my bedroom, where my husband hopefully will do a really good job of restoring that passion and making me feel important and loved and cherished. So you're absolutely right, Brian. It is a process. It usually doesn't happen overnight, but see, that's the problem I help solve. Women don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have a mentor. They don't have someone they could trust, but they don't want to talk to their mom. They don't want to talk to their minister's wife. They like to talk to me because they don't know me. It's a safe place.
Yeah.
And they can pour out their heart and I can help them. And that's, like I say, the problem that I help solving is to provide the mentoring, the support, the ideas, the enthusiasm. But a lot of ladies, like I say, the only kind of sex they're given is the stuff on TV. And to be honest with you, I don't want much of what's on there.
So let's go back to your very first premise or discussion point, which is that that God actually wants us to have good marital relations, a good time in the bedroom. Why do you think that that religion, and not just Christian religion, but lots of religions, have been so negative toward sex?
I have no idea, Brian. As I said, my book of reference is the Bible, and you cannot find that kind of thinking in the Bible. The Bible is very pro-sexual, and where this idea of it being some sort of a sin, I have no idea, because it is certainly not based within the biblical premise. I can't comment on the Quran and some of the other ones, but for sure, from the context that I'm aware of, I have no idea where they do, whether it was just somebody's idea that they imposed on others. But unfortunately, many women have grown up with that kind of negativity, or their mother has said to them, suffer through sex, it's your necessary duty. Well, how does that set you up for success in the bedroom when you've heard your mom gripe about it? Like, just do it till you have babies and shut them up and, get on with your life.
Do mothers actually say that? Oh my gosh.
You bet they do. I had tons of ladies say, that's the kind of messages my mom gave me about sex. And so I say, I'm sorry if your mom did not have a good sex life, but don't let her experiences ruin yours. Do not, again, give her that much power.
Now, you are a minister's wife. You've been married, I understand, for over 30 years. How did the church react to this new role for the minister's wife?
Well, very, very positively. And it's been interesting. I'll direct people to my website, hotandholylady.com. And if you go to the media page, when I first did one of my seminars, I sent it to the local newspaper. And they called me and they said, what? A minister's wife is talking about sex? And I said, yeah, what's the problem? And they said, well, we would never expected, someone in the church, because we expected that all people who were of faith were some fuddy-duddy prudes who wouldn't even say the word sex. And I said, well, you're not talking to one. And the captions, you should read some of the headlines I've got in the newspaper. Sexual salvation. Pastor's wife helps her flock find the joy of sex. Another one, pastor's wife shows the righteous way to do it. So it's actually been quite shocking how the positive response I've got, because apparently I am breaking down the paradigm that if you're a woman of faith, or you have, you're wanting a heterosexual monogamous relationship, that you're some sort of a prude. And I say, well, maybe you are, but I'm not. And I want to encourage you to enjoy the same fun I do.
Now, you come across incredibly enthusiastic. One of the things that you said that you try to teach your clients is for them to have enthusiasm. How do you teach enthusiasm?
You don't teach enthusiasm as much as you give them tools, some ideas. Like sometimes ladies will say, I've lost my libido. And so I say, okay, That I get that. I have had my libido diminished from time to time. But let's try to understand why that is happening, because sometimes there can be some very good reasons that have nothing to do with your husband of why you don't have the strong sex life. I ask questions like, are you eating properly? Are you exercising? Do you love your own body? Because you can't love somebody else when you don't love yourself. Do you have hatred toward men? Do you have you actually researched on how your body is made? So I try to help them identify what are some of the reasons why their libido. Maybe they're trying to be superwoman. At one point, I had very little sex drive. You know why? Because I was working outside of the home. I had 2 preschoolers. I was involved in the community. I was involved at the church. By the time I got home to bed, Simon was crawling into bed with a dish rag. Very little in the way of sexual energy. And I began to realize, you know what? I couldn't continue to spin all these plates, that I was expecting myself to be superwoman. And so I had to realign my time. And so sometimes your sex problems are not really sexual. It's a poor time management. You've just said yes to way too many things.
Well,
You've got way too much on your plate.
You make that time in the bedroom a priority.
Absolutely.
A priority. It was the thing that happened if you had energy when everything else was done.
Correct. And that's often, ladies, the number one reason ladies say they don't like sex is because I am tired. But have I got time to give another little few strategies here?
Yes.
Okay. I tell them you don't always have to have a long, drawn-out sexual experience. I compare sex to food. Fast food, main course meals, and buffets. So, oftentimes your husband, he starts giving you the hint, he'd like to be intimate, and you go, oh my gosh, I am so tired, I do not have another ounce of energy. So I say, you can have, in that particular evening, quickie sex. In other words, a fast sexual encounter that doesn't have to take all night. It doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be totally aroused, but it can fit the bill. Now, I often ask ladies to ask themselves this question. When your husband says, hey, you want to get it on, dear? And you go, oh, I'm so tired. I said, ask yourself, can you muster up another 3 to 5 minutes worth of energy? Because if you've been married fairly, not too long, you will have figured that the whole expression can be over-endowed with in that short amount of time. And so if the answer to that is yes, say, you know what, buddy? I am tired, but we can have fast food sex tonight. Give me your best shot. Let's go for it. And not lay there like a dead fish, like, okay, hurry up, I'm tired, do your thing. No, it can be a spontaneous, a fun moment together. And then you can have main course meals. And that's when you actually set the table. You've taken time for ambience. You've got music, you've got candles, you've got lingerie. You have time. You're not rushed. And then lastly, you can have buffet sex, which is when you go away for a getaway and you have all morning without the kids, they're at grandma's. And you can really have an extended time of sexual intimacy. So I can help women see that when they're tired, you don't have to throw out sex completely. You can have fast food sex. You can have main course meals and you can have buffet. And so when I give ladies the idea that you can give a varied sexual menu, hey, they say, hey, I can run with that. I can do that. And my husband's happy, I'm happy, it's all good.
We're chatting with Ruth Clarence, hot and holy lady. What a fascinating conversation. We're going to take a quick break and come back with some concluding comments. Stay with us. Well, what a fascinating conversation tonight with the hot and holy lady, Ruth Clarence, a minister's wife who is in the business of online courses, speeches, and a book all about how to have a great sex life. Ruth, if people want to contact you or access some of your courses, how do they do that?
You can go to my website. All the information is there, hot and A-N-D, holylady.com, hotandholylady.com. There you will see in depth the subjects that I talk about in the course. You can enroll online, then you'll be given a password, and then you can access it anytime you want. You can also book an appointment for one-on-one coaching for ladies as well as men. So really, when you go to my website, All of your questions should be answered there.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate it. Do you have a final message for any of the ladies or gentlemen that might be listening or watching tonight?
Yes, you deserve a good sex life. It's one of the great perks of marriage. Why not put some effort into it? Why not keep that fire, that romantic fire burning? And as a result, both of you can enjoy mutually satisfying. It's not all about the man. Women can also enjoy this just as much. Mutually satisfying, pleasurable, fun-filled bedroom life. So I say to ladies, go for it, do it, have fun, you deserve it.
Ruth Clarence, the hot and holy lady, thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you tonight.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you contacting me.
Good evening, everybody. That's Brian Crombie for the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Good night.